Daniel waited until the courtroom was full. He always preferred an audience. The probate hearing was scheduled for 9 in the morning, but by 8:45 every bench was occupied. Word travels quickly in coastal towns, especially when money is involved. The courthouse stood 3 streets back from the marina, its windows tall and narrow, salt clinging faintly to the glass. Outside, masts shifted in the wind. Inside, the air carried paper, varnish, and something older: expectation. I sat at the petitioner's table beside my attorney, navy suit, low heels, hair secured at the base of my neck. I do not dress for comfort in rooms like that. I dress for neutrality. My hands rested lightly on a closed folder. Across from me, Daniel leaned back in his chair as if this were a luncheon arranged in his honor. He wore a pale gray suit, slightly too fitted across the shoulders, the way he liked it: confident, modern. His cufflinks caught the light whenever he moved his wrists. He made sure to move them often. Our mother sat behind him, posture tight, handbag clasped in both hands. My father sat beside her, staring at the carved edge of the wooden bench as if studying craftsmanship. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The usual rituals unfolded. Case number, names for the record, estate of Margaret Whitaker, our grandmother. The matter seemed simple on paper: contested allocation of coastal property, investment accounts, and liquid reserves. Daniel argued that I had misrepresented my professional standing to justify a greater claim under a clause referencing federal service. He stood when his attorney finished summarizing. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady and projecting, "my sister has built her argument on an inflated version of her career." A pause. Just long enough. "She made up her service for the money." The words traveled cleanly through the courtroom. Someone behind me shifted, a faint intake of breath. I did not turn. For years, Daniel had been comfortable narrating my life for other people. He simplified what he did not understand. He dismissed what he could not measure. When I declined to explain absences, he labeled them inconsistency. When I avoided details, he called it dramatics. He had always preferred a story where he stood taller. I kept my eyes on the bench. The judge regarded him over his glasses. "Mr. Whitaker, that is a serious allegation." Daniel offered a restrained smile. "Then it should be simple to verify." He glanced at me, waiting for movement. Defense, irritation, something he could interpret as guilt. I gave him nothing. I learned restraint early. When I earned a competitive federal grant in my 20s, my mother had said, "Don't make Daniel feel small." When I was transferred into a restricted division years later, my father waved it away as temporary administrative placement. Success in our house required dilution, so I diluted. Classified assignments became consulting. Extended deployments became travel contracts. Commendations remained in sealed envelopes inside a locked drawer. Covert service was an extension of habit. Silence was not foreign to me. It was structure. My attorney slid a sealed packet toward the bench. "Under seal, Your Honor," she said. The envelope was heavy stock. The red stamp across the front was visible even from where I sat. Classified. Daniel exhaled through his nose. "This is unnecessary theater." The judge ignored him. He broke the seal with deliberate care. He read. Time stretched. The harbor beyond the windows continued its indifferent rhythm. A boat horn sounded faintly in the distance. Inside, the courtroom settled into a tighter stillness. Daniel shifted in his seat. The judge's expression did not change, but his posture did. Straighter, more attentive. He reached for the intercom at his desk and spoke quietly to someone outside. Less than a minute later, the courtroom doors opened. They did not swing violently. They did not need to. 2 federal agents stepped inside. Dark suits, no insignia visible. Their presence altered the air in a way that did not require explanation. The gallery went silent. One agent approached the bench and handed the judge an additional folder. The exchange was brief, professional. Daniel's attorney leaned toward him, whispering. Daniel's jaw tightened. The judge cleared his throat. "For the record," he said evenly, "the court has received formal confirmation of Ms. Whitaker's federal service, clearance level, and operational history." He looked directly at Daniel. "Service confirmed." One of the agents inclined his head slightly. "Her clearance is active." No one applauded. No one gasped. The truth did not arrive as drama. It arrived as documentation. Daniel's confidence did not shatter. It thinned. He stared at the table in front of him as if searching for an alternative interpretation of wood grain. My mother's fingers loosened around her handbag. My father blinked once, slowly, recalculating. The judge continued. "Mr. Whitaker, accusations of fraud within this court are not made lightly. Counsel will want to consider their next statements carefully." Daniel swallowed. For a moment, I saw the boy he had been at 12, caught in a lie he had assumed would go unquestioned. "You could have told us," he said quietly, not to the judge, but to me. I turned my head slightly. "There are questions that are not requests for information. They are demands for control." "I was never asked," I said. I did not elaborate. The hearing proceeded. Technical adjustments to asset evaluation, revision of the weight assigned to the Federal Service Clause, a motion to review Daniel's prior affidavit. Each development shifted the balance incrementally, not loudly, not theatrically, just enough. When the judge called for a short recess, the agents stepped back toward the doors but did not leave. Their presence was not protective. It was procedural. Outside, word had already spread. When we exited onto the courthouse steps, cameras waited at the base of the stairs. A local reporter I recognized from previous civic events angled her microphone toward the entrance. Daniel hesitated in the doorway. For years, he had moved through rooms assuming gravity favored him. Now he seemed uncertain where to stand. I walked past him without comment. The wind from the harbor pressed against my coat. Cold, clean. Behind me, I could hear Daniel speaking quickly to his attorney. Damage control, narrative adjustment. The story had shifted, and he could feel it slipping. I did not feel victorious. I felt aligned. Inside my bag, my phone vibrated once. A message from a contact whose name would mean nothing to my family. "We are monitoring." I typed one response. Understood. Years of silence had not been weakness. They had been compliance with a system larger than Daniel's assumptions. The hardest part would not be court. It would be what followed. Press would gather. Extended relatives would call. Some would express pride. Others would ask careful questions about security and connections. Daniel would have to decide who he was without the comfort of minimizing me. And my parents would have to confront a version of their daughter they had never bothered to know. I adjusted my gloves and walked toward my car. The sea air moved steadily across the lot. There are moments when truth does not explode. It settles. Have you ever watched someone's certainty dissolve under quiet fact? I will continue, piece by piece. If you feel the tension building, stay with me for the next part. And tell me what you would have done in that courtroom. The press did not wait for clarity. By noon, my name was moving through headlines that paired inheritance dispute with classified service. Words attract attention when they are placed beside money. I did not give a statement. I left the courthouse, drove past the marina, and returned to the rental house I had taken for the duration of the proceedings. It sat 2 streets back from the water, white siding, narrow porch, blinds always half drawn. Temporary spaces are easier to control. Inside, I removed my jacket and placed it over the back of a chair. I do not pace after impact. I inventory. Phone calls, incoming messages, unknown numbers, a request from a national outlet, 3 from regional reporters, 2 from extended cousins I had not heard from in years, and 1 from my mother. I let it sit. Silence, when chosen, is different from silence imposed. An hour later, my attorney called. "They will attempt to reposition," she said without preamble. "Expect a petition for full asset reevaluation. possibly an argument that your clearance creates conflicts of interest regarding property management. I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched a thin line of sunlight move across the floor. On what basis? I asked. Perception, she replied. They may argue that your federal status complicates oversight. Daniel had always adapted quickly when threatened. If humiliation failed, he would pivot to bureaucracy, make the system seem uneasy about me. I want exact language, I said. Every filing. You'll have it. I ended the call and finally listened to my mother's voicemail. Her voice trembled, but not with apology. Lily, this is all very sudden. Your father is worried. Daniel feels blindsided. We just didn't understand. Call us. Blindsided. As if I had detonated something. As if the accusation had not originated from their side of the room. I did not return the call. Instead, I opened my laptop and began compiling documents. Service confirmations already on record. Financial disclosures required for clearance renewals. Audit trails of income, taxes, charitable contributions. Structure is armor. By late afternoon, my email contained a forwarded draft of Daniel's intended motion. As predicted, it framed my classified background as a material factor, requiring extended review of estate control. He was not challenging my service anymore. He was attempting to leverage it. I read the draft twice. He had always assumed proximity to power equaled entitlement to it. When we were children, if I earned something tangible, he would examine it not with curiosity, but calculation. How does this benefit me? Nothing had changed. The next hearing was scheduled for 3 days later. In that time, the narrative outside the courtroom shifted. A local columnist published a speculative piece about quiet siblings with secret careers. A cable segment debated transparency in inheritance disputes involving federal personnel. None of them knew the operational reality of classified work. They knew only the suggestion of it. On the second evening, Daniel appeared at the rental house unannounced. I saw his car through the blinds before he knocked. I opened the door without inviting him in. He removed his sunglasses slowly, as if preparing for negotiation. "You could have warned us," he said, the second time in 48 hours. "About what?" I asked. "That you weren't just consulting, that agents would walk into court. You accused me publicly." His jaw tightened. "Because you never correct anything. You let people assume." I studied his face. The same controlled confidence, now threaded with something brittle. "Assumptions are not my responsibility," I said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you understand what this does? The media, investors, people are calling. People, always unnamed. I understand documentation," I replied, "and consequences." He exhaled sharply. "This doesn't have to get worse." "Then stop escalating it." A long pause. He shifted tactics. "Mom is upset." "She was not upset when you accused me of fraud." That was strategy. There it was. Not anger, not misunderstanding. Strategy. "You miscalculated," I said. His expression flickered just slightly. "You think this makes you untouchable?" he asked quietly. I held his gaze. "No," I said. "It makes me documented." He looked past me into the house, as if searching for signs of excess, for proof that my life had been larger than he allowed. "You're still my sister," he said. A statement, not warmth, a reminder of hierarchy. "I am," I agreed. He waited for something else, reassurance, softening. I did not provide it. After a moment, he put his sunglasses back on. "This isn't over," he said. "I know." He left. The following morning, my attorney informed me that the federal agency overseeing my clearance had submitted an additional letter to the court. It clarified that my service record, while restricted in detail, carried no financial conflict prohibitions relevant to private inheritance. Daniel's argument weakened before it fully formed. In the courtroom 3 days later, he appeared composed. So did I. The judge acknowledged receipt of the agency clarification. "Given this documentation," he said, The court finds no grounds to delay asset distribution based on the petitioner's federal status. Daniel's attorney attempted a brief objection. It dissolved under reference to the sealed confirmation already entered into record. I watched Daniel's posture change again. Not collapse, adjust. The balance of the estate shifted formally that morning. The clause recognizing federal service as contributory standing was upheld. Asset percentages recalculated, signatures scheduled. There was no applause, just ink. As we exited, reporters pressed closer than before. "Ms. Whitaker, do you feel vindicated?" I stopped briefly, not to perform, but to control phrasing. "This is a private matter resolved through legal documentation," I said. "Nothing more." No elaboration. Daniel remained several steps behind me. For years he had spoken over me in rooms without consequence. Now every word he chose carried risk. The real aftermath began that evening. Extended relatives who had remained distant began sending careful messages of admiration. An uncle asked if I might consult on a municipal contract. A cousin inquired about internship opportunities in federal environments. Proximity attempts. My mother called again. This time I answered. "We're proud of you," she said quickly, as if afraid the line might disconnect. Pride arrives easily when status becomes visible. "I see," I replied. "We just didn't know." "You didn't ask." Silence. Your parents can misunderstand you for years and still feel entitled to immediate reconciliation. "Can we come by?" she asked. "Not tonight." Another pause. "Lily," she said carefully, "we need to figure out what this means for the family." "It means boundaries," I thought. "It means the court has ruled," I said aloud. When I ended the call, I stood by the window and watched the harbor lights flicker on one by one. The public revelation had detonated quietly, but the private recalibration was only beginning. Daniel would have to decide whether he wanted proximity to my authority or distance from it. My parents would have to confront the reality that quiet Lily had never been small. I did not become louder. I became precise. And precision is harder to argue with than pride. The court finalized distribution on a Thursday morning. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. The judge reviewed the recalculated percentages, confirmed signatures, and spoke in the same measured tone he had used since the first day. "Distribution shall proceed as amended. All filings are entered into record." Ink moved across paper. Daniel signed without looking at me. I signed without looking at him. Our hands never touched the same document at the same time. When it was done, the courtroom emptied quickly. Reporters had already shifted attention to a maritime zoning dispute down the hall. Public fascination is brief. Structural consequences last longer. Outside, the air carried a storm warning. Low clouds, wind tightening over the harbor. Daniel stood near the steps, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said sharply. "We'll restructure. No, it's contained." Contained. I walked past him. This was not victory. It was correction. The financial transfers began within 48 hours. Accounts realigned, property titles updated. Legal confirmations arrived in encrypted emails and certified envelopes. I reviewed each line. Precision is not paranoia. It is maintenance. The coastal property, the one Daniel had intended to manage exclusively, now reflected shared authority with weighted decision clauses. The investment portfolio, once assumed to flow under his guidance, required dual authorization for liquidation beyond set thresholds. He had built his confidence on singular control. That structure no longer existed. My parents requested a meeting at their home the following Sunday. I accepted. Not for reconciliation, for clarity. Their house sat overlooking the same water it always had. White siding, blue shutters, meticulously trimmed hedges. Appearances remain stable even when foundations shift. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not fragile, just uncertain. "We've made tea," she said. I stepped inside. The living room was arranged carefully, as if expecting an inspection. Daniel sat on the far end of the sofa. My father stood near the window, arms folded. No one embraced me. That, at least, was honest. "We need to talk about how this moves forward," my father began. "Not how we move forward. How this does." I removed my gloves and set them on the side table. "What specifically?" I asked. Daniel leaned forward. "The press cycle will fade," he said. "But investors have questions. They see your name attached to federal operations. It creates speculation." "Speculation about what?" "Influence. Access." I studied him. "You're concerned about reputational risk," I said. He did not deny it. My mother spoke quickly. "We just want unity. The family needs to present a coherent image." Image. The word carried more weight than apology. "I have no intention of discussing operational matters publicly," I said. "There is no reputational exposure from my side." "That's not the point," Daniel replied. "You represent unpredictability." I almost smiled. "For years," I said evenly, "I represented irrelevance." Silence. My father finally turned from the window. "You could have trusted us," he said. "With classified details? With your life." I held his gaze. "I did," I said, "by not involving you." That landed. He inhaled slowly. "This has changed dynamics," he continued. "Yes. We're not accustomed to it. No." Daniel's composure thinned. "You enjoy this," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I require it." He looked confused. "Require what?" "Accuracy." The room held still. My mother reached for her teacup but did not drink. "We want to understand what you plan to do with your portion," she asked carefully. There it was. Control, reframed as concern. "I will manage it," I said. "Independently?" "Yes." Daniel exhaled sharply. "That's inefficient." "It is secure." He studied me the way he used to study contracts, searching for leverage. "You don't have the network," he said. "I have a different one." He understood the implication. Silence stretched. Finally, my father spoke again. "We built this family on trust." I did not respond immediately. Trust requires symmetry. "What you built," I said calmly, "was hierarchy." My mother flinched. Daniel stood. "So that's it?" he asked. "You just redraw the structure and leave us to adjust?" "Yes." The word did not require volume. He stared at me for several seconds, then laughed once, without humor. "You've changed," he said. "No," I answered. "You just have more information." He walked toward the hallway, then stopped. "Investors will approach you directly now," he said over his shoulder. "Be careful." "I am." When he disappeared from the room, the silence felt less tense. My mother's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "We never meant to diminish you," she said. "Intent is often irrelevant to outcome." "I know," I replied. My father looked older than he had in court. "What happens now?" he asked. "We proceed," I said, "with defined boundaries." He nodded slowly. "And if Daniel pushes again?" "He won't," I said. Not because of emotion, because systems had closed around him. Regulatory filings now required disclosure if he attempted unilateral restructuring of joint assets. Any move aggressive enough to disadvantage me would trigger review. He knew that. When I left their house, the storm had arrived. Rain struck the windshield in steady sheets. I drove along the coast road with both hands on the wheel, visibility reduced but sufficient. Pressure does not disappear after exposure. It changes form. By the following week, 2 investment firms had contacted me directly. Polite, curious, careful. I declined meetings. I restructured my portion quietly through a private trust with oversight clauses tied to compliance audits already required by my clearance status. Documentation layered over documentation. Control without spectacle. Daniel sent one final message. "We should coordinate before year-end." I responded once. "All coordination will occur through counsel. No hostility. Just structure." The family dynamic did not explode. It realigned. At a charity event a month later, I entered a room where Daniel was already speaking with donors. He saw me, paused, adjusted his tone. He did not introduce me as consulting. He said simply, "My sister." Nothing more. That was sufficient. The hardest part was not public exposure. It was recalibrating proximity. Who would he become without the advantage of minimizing me? Who would my parents become now that silence no longer meant compliance? I did not celebrate. I did not announce transformation. I continued my work. I maintained my boundaries, and I remained exact. Have you ever watched a relationship shift not through confrontation, but through documentation? When hierarchy dissolves quietly, what replaces it? If this story resonates, share your thoughts and stay with me for the next reckoning. The calls began 2 weeks after the court finalized distribution, not from investors, from foundations, then advisory boards, then a federal oversight liaison whose name I recognized from internal briefings. Visibility alters gravity. I did not accept invitations immediately. I requested agendas, charters, governance documents. I read them the way I read operational briefs, looking for fault lines, not praise. Daniel noticed. He always notices when leverage migrates. He called on a Tuesday evening. "I heard you were approached by Halbrook Capital," he said without greeting. "I receive correspondence," I replied. "You should loop me in." "Why?" A pause. "Because they're within our coastal network." Our. The word had shifted tone since the ruling. Less ownership, more negotiation. "My counsel reviews all external engagement," I said. "If collaboration is necessary, they will contact yours." He exhaled. "You're building walls." "I'm building process." "There is a difference." He lowered his voice. "You understand that people will assume we operate together." "They can assume." "And if they reach out to me for access?" "Decline." Silence stretched between us. "You've changed the ecosystem," he said finally. "Yes. That affects everyone." "So did the accusation." He did not respond to that. The line disconnected without conclusion. 3 days later, a formal request arrived from a regional security advisory board seeking my participation. The language was careful. They cited experience, strategic perspective, oversight integrity. No mention of inheritance. I accepted. The first meeting was held in a glass building overlooking the harbor. 12 members, 2 retired officers, 1 sitting state official, several private sector directors. Daniel's firm had previously consulted for them. He was not present. I entered without announcement and took the seat assigned to me. The chairwoman introduced me simply, "Lily Whitaker, Federal Operations." No elaboration. During the meeting, a proposal surfaced regarding maritime infrastructure expansion. Risk analysis was shallow, overly optimistic projections. I waited until the end of the discussion. Then I spoke. "Your vulnerability assessment omits cross-jurisdictional interference vectors," I said calmly, "specifically in the third-party contracting tier." Several heads turned. "Can you clarify?" the chairwoman asked. I did. No theatrics, no classified details, just structural reality. The tone in the room shifted. Not deference, attention. By the time the meeting adjourned, 2 members requested private follow-up consultations, formally through the board. Daniel called that evening. "They're reconsidering parts of the expansion proposal," he said, "because of you." "Because of incomplete modeling," I replied. "They were comfortable before. They are more secure now." His frustration was quiet. "You're destabilizing projects." "I'm stabilizing them." There was a long pause. "You don't care about economic ripple," he said. "I care about operational integrity." He had no argument for that without admitting prior compromise. A week later, a revised proposal circulated. Tighter oversight, revised risk frameworks, reduced exposure. Daniel's firm was asked to resubmit their advisory role under new compliance thresholds. He did not thank me. He did not confront me either. pressure shifted, not through conflict, through standards. At a family dinner the following month, small, obligatory, Daniel arrived later than usual. He sat across from me, posture measured. My mother attempted light conversation about coastal weather patterns. My father discussed market fluctuations. No one mentioned court. Halfway through the meal, Daniel set down his fork. "I've been invited to co-chair the revised infrastructure committee," he said. My father looked pleased. "That's good," I said. He studied my face, searching for sarcasm. There was none. "They adjusted compliance requirements," he continued. "It will slow margins. It will reduce liability." He nodded once. "Yes." The acknowledgement was small. It mattered. After dinner, as coats were gathered and dishes cleared, he stopped me near the hallway. "You could have undermined us publicly," he said quietly. "I didn't need to." He watched me for a long moment. "Why didn't you?" "Because humiliation is inefficient. Because structure is stronger than spectacle," I said. He absorbed that. For years he had relied on spectacle. It had failed him in court. He was adapting. The real shift came in early winter. A federal review panel flagged a coastal zoning irregularity tied indirectly to one of Daniel's subsidiary partnerships. Not criminal, procedural. His name surfaced in an internal memo forwarded to my clearance oversight channel due to proximity to my advisory role. Conflict potential. I read the memo twice. I could have distanced myself publicly. I did not. Instead, I sent a brief formal notice through counsel. All advisory engagements remain compliant. No shared financial instruments exist between Ms. Whitaker and referenced entity. Documentation attached. Precise. Contained. Daniel called within an hour. "You saw it," he said. "Yes." "You're not going to—" "No," he exhaled. "Why?" "Because it is procedural. And if it escalates, then it escalates." He was quiet. "You don't protect me," he said. "I protect process." The distinction settled between us. Over the following weeks, the zoning issue resolved without penalty. Revised disclosures filed. Minor reputational bruise. Nothing more. But something in Daniel's posture had changed. At the next advisory board meeting, he deferred to compliance recommendations before proposing expansion metrics. He no longer joked about risk thresholds. He no longer narrated my career for others. At a public event near year-end, a journalist approached us together. "Is it true," she asked, "that your sister's federal background has influenced your firm's strategic direction?" Daniel glanced at me briefly. Then he answered, "Yes." No embellishment. No humor, just fact. I did not speak. He did not diminish. The balance of power in our family did not reverse. It recalibrated. My parents adjusted quietly. They asked fewer speculative questions. They stopped suggesting joint asset strategies. They invited me to dinner without agenda. Daniel sent quarterly updates through counsel without prompting. Boundaries became habit. I did not become warmer. I became exact. And exactness, once established, is difficult to dislodge. The hardest part had not been public exposure. It had been resisting the urge to retaliate when the system offered opportunity. Restraint is quieter than revenge, but it endures longer. As winter settled over the harbor and the boats thinned in their slips, I stood once more outside the courthouse for an unrelated filing. The building looked the same. Salt on glass, stone steps, measured silence. Daniel arrived separately for a different matter. We crossed paths near the entrance. He stopped. "Lily," he said. Not accusation, not strategy, just my name. "Yes?" He considered his words carefully. "I'm adjusting." "I see." A brief nod passed between us. No embrace, no reconciliation speech, just recognition. When power shifts quietly, it does not announce itself again. It simply remains. Have you ever chosen structure over retaliation when you finally held leverage? When the room recalibrates around you, do you press further or hold steady? If this story has stayed with you, share your thoughts and stay for the next chapter of Quiet Consequence. Winter arrived without asking permission. The harbor emptied. Boats stood like dark outlines tied to their slips. The wind turned steady, stripped of sentiment. I have always preferred that kind of wind. It doesn't try to be liked. The final court document came in early January, confirmation that all procedural reviews were closed, estate distribution finalized, judge's signature. I read it once. Then I closed the folder. There was no rush of victory, just quiet, legal, stable. A week later, Daniel asked to meet, not at our parents' house, not at his office, at a small cafe by the water where no one knew our last name. He was already there when I arrived. That was new. He sat near the window, no tie, no performance, just a man measuring his words before using them. I removed my gloves and took the seat across from him. "I'm shutting down one of the partnership funds," he said. Not defensive, not dramatic, just factual. "Reducing exposure." I nodded. "That's reasonable." He watched my face carefully, searching for sarcasm. There was none. "I used to think control meant speed," he said. "Now I think it means auditability." I let the silence sit for a moment. "You've stopped confusing confidence with correctness," I said. He gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. "You could have destroyed me." I looked past him at the gray line of the horizon. "That wouldn't have been efficient." He almost smiled. "You always say things like that, like it's logistics." "It is logistics." He went quiet again. Then he said, "I was wrong in court." It wasn't theatrical. He didn't reach for forgiveness. He stated a fact. That was enough. "Yes," I said. He nodded. We didn't revisit childhood. We didn't dissect old family dynamics. Some conversations matter because they don't turn into battles. When we stepped outside, the wind cut sharp off the water. "I won't speak for you anymore," he said. "Good. And I won't try to minimize what I don't understand." I studied him carefully. "That will make things simpler." He accepted that. No promises, no gestures, just acceptance. Our parents changed more quietly. My mother stopped saying, "We didn't know." Instead, she began asking specific questions. "When are you traveling? Do you need anything? Is it safe?" My father, one evening at dinner, said awkwardly, "You structured this well." Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "You were right." Structured. For him, that was something. I nodded. In the spring, I sold the coastal house. Not because of pressure, not as strategy, because I didn't need to anchor myself in a place where I had once been treated as secondary. I moved my assets into a quieter structure, less public visibility, clear internal controls, compliance layered over compliance. Daniel didn't object. He reviewed quarterly summaries through counsel. Occasionally, he asked direct, neutral questions. No undertone, no dominance. We did not become close. We became correct, and that proved more durable. The real ending didn't happen in court. It happened the first time no one tried to test me at the dinner table. The first time my silence wasn't interpreted as weakness. The first time Daniel introduced me simply as my sister. No embellishment, no commentary. That was enough. I didn't grow louder. I didn't grow softer. I became exact, and exactness spreads. Now, when disagreements surface, they're documented first. When risks appear, they're analyzed. When accusations are made, they're verified before they're spoken out loud. No shouting, no spectacle. Sometimes you don't have to take power. You just have to stop handing it away. Last night, I stood by the harbor again. The boats had returned. The season reopened. Conversations carried easily over the docks. Life continued, indifferent to private recalibrations. I thought about how easy it would have been to retaliate harder, to expose more, to press until something broke permanently. Destruction is simple. Structure is harder. The story didn't end because Daniel lost. It ended because he stopped fighting the fact of my existence. That was the shift. That was the balance. And that was enough. Tell me, what's harder in your experience, proving your strength or holding it without turning it into a weapon? If this kind of quiet reckoning resonates with you, stay. Share your thoughts. There are more stories like this, measured, steady, and exact.